Well, good day. It is now the 18th already of May 2021. Today's topic is going to be try to answer a question that I get kind of frequently. Will I be disqualified from an agency if I have X in my background? And the answer is it depends. Okay. What I'm going to speak about today is two things: security clearance and suitability determination. They're actually two separate things, okay? Now, if you're looking for a job in law enforcement as a law enforcement officer, whether it's federal, state, or local, they're going to do some sort of suitability determination to determine that you are suitable to be a police officer or state trooper or federal agent or deputy marshal or border patrol agent. And there's a process that you will go through to make that determination. Now, on the other side of the coin, in federal government, there is also security clearance determinations. And security clearance determinations are determinations as to whether a person is eligible to handle classified material. And of course, not all or even most law enforcement jobs in the U.S. require classified material. Certain agencies require that you be eligible for a high clearance, but you're highly unlikely to handle classified material. Others, you handle classified material all the time. It depends. But there are different processes, okay? You can be eligible for security clearance, the highest of security clearances, but still be ineligible to be a federal law enforcement or even state law enforcement officer. You can be eligible to be a federal and state law enforcement officer from a suitability side, but still be ineligible for a high security clearance. It can be a little bit confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out the two processes, security clearance determination and suitability determination. In some agencies they overlap, and others they do not. And we'll take a look at that, and hopefully this will provide a little bit of clarification for you. Okay, just the real basics on this to begin with, security clearance and suitability determinations. Again, this pertains to law enforcement. That's what I'm speaking of. And security clearance is simply whether a person will be given access to classified material. Suitability, whether a person is qualified and a good candidate for a law enforcement position. Now, you would think they would both be the same, and in many cases they are, but there are huge cases or huge instances where there are differences. And again, security clearances are adjudicated by the employing agency, generally speaking, based on regulations set forth by the United States government. An exception to this would be presidential appointees. The president can appoint, nominate anyone he wants, or hire his own White House staff. The FBI will do a security background investigation on them. The material is then turned over to White House counsel, who can then decide with the president whether or not to grant the clearance or not. From what I've heard recently, a number of people were asked to leave the Biden White House based on material that turned up on their SF-86. But again, it was not the FBI that made that determination. It's done by the White House counsel and the president. Now, if you're applying to an agency, the agency then follows regulations set forth by the U.S. government. And there's various levels of clearance. At the lowest level, confidential and secret. And those require basically what's called a national agency check, a criminal record, a credit check, your employment, just a verification of your employment. If you're in the military, they look at your military file. They do what's called a defense central index to see if you were in the military. Now, if you're trying to get a job that requires top secret, that'll require a background investigation. And if you're applying to the FBI, if you're applying to Central Intelligence, if you're applying to State Department, they do their own backgrounds, but every other agency does them or hands them over to the Office of Personnel Management. And this can have disastrous results, as you will see.
The federal government could be much worse than first thought. CBS News has learned that millions more at risk of having their personal information compromised. Federal workers were the apparent targets. Jeff Pegues is in Washington with the status of that investigation. Jeff, good morning to you.
Good morning. The number is staggering. A law enforcement source confirms that investigators now suspect Chinese hackers may have compromised the personal data of up to 14 million people. That's more than 3 times what investigators originally thought. The stolen data includes information about current and former government employees, including social security numbers. We've also learned that even law enforcement and intelligence agencies like the FBI and CIA had data compromised. There is an ongoing assessment of exactly how much was exposed and whether the cyber attack has actually ended. In a statement, the Office of Personnel Management says OPM and the incident response team currently have no indication of malicious activity or an adversarial presence. Investigators are still sweeping for signs of an intrusion, but acknowledge that it will take a long time to make a full and accurate assessment. Gail?
So, Jeff, some of the victims of this cyber attack haven't even been notified yet, true?
Well, that's right, and that's the other problem. An OPM spokesman says that there is a group of people that they don't have updated contact information for, but they are trying to identify and notify those people.
All right, Jeff Pegues reporting from Washington. Thank you.
So the material can be compromised. You got to hand it to the Chinese. But it requires a single scope background investigation. Then there's a higher levels of clearance, what they call special compartmented information, which gives you access to a SCIF, which is a secure communication facility. Just means you can go in there and read top secret material if you're cleared to do it, and you can't bring any electronic material, so on and so forth. Special access, which is, more information. And then there's clearances that are relevant to particular agencies, such as the Q clearance, which is the Department of Energy, and the Yankee White, which is anyone who handles nuclear codes, launch codes, and those kind of things. The type of positions that require a security clearance, again, there's probably well over 1 million people working right now in the military as contractors. You have to have a need to know and then the clearance. And it could be everything from a spy to a clerical person in the DEA. Diplomats, analysts, law enforcement officers, a lot of people need security clearances at different levels. Now, why are people denied clearance? And these are the reasons in order of commonality. And the most common, and you might be surprised, is excessive indebtedness. And that is because, when this initially arose, it was a case of a man named Aldrich Ames, who was a CIA case agent, a case officer, a spy. But he was a heavy drinker, and he also had huge debts. So he went to the KGB, and they gave him money, and he sold secrets. So starting in the 1980s, they began to crack down on anyone who had bad credit. And if you have bad credit, you have to get that cleared up before you'll get a clearance. Number 2, foreign influence. Now, what do they mean by that? If your wife is a Chinese citizen, a citizen of the People's Republic of China, and travels back and forth, that might be a problem if you're trying for a high-level security clearance. If you have family members who are in countries that are hostile to the United States. Certainly lack of candor on the form, that can always do it. Recent drug and alcohol abuse. Now, surprisingly, if it's in the past, they're much more forgiving of that than the suitability determination. Okay, and the lack of candor. Just having the simple fact that a person has been convicted of a crime, even of a crime involving moral turpitude, such as theft. If it was in the distant past, it probably isn't going to be a problem for security clearance. Just because a person is, and I put this in quotations, weird, that's not in and of itself enough to deny security clearance. There's very strict rules and regulations about that. Now, if you lived overseas for a long time, like you studied in Russia or China, not under the auspices of the U.S. government, they might have a problem with giving you security clearance. They may have a polygraph, and the purpose of the polygraph in this case to determine if you've been recruited or approached by a foreign power. Okay, law enforcement agencies that require high-level clearance, of course the FBI, the DEA, the sneaky service, ICE, ATF, diplomatic security, the special transport people, and Department of Energy, the military investigative agencies, okay, and any job that has a clearance listed in the vacancy announcement. Now, what about suitability? Again, every police department in the United States does a suitability determination. And a person, it determines whether you are stable, whether you're mature, whether you're honest. And a person can be eligible for security clearance but not suitable for law enforcement, and vice versa. You can be suitable for law enforcement but not security clearance. Now we're going to look at the reasons for suitability denial. And here we go. First of all, I'm going to explain the second one in real detail in a minute. But lack of candor. Okay, that's a big one. Okay, if you are dishonest on the application, you're done. Secondly, any conviction, of course, a felony conviction, you can't carry a weapon, but a misdemeanor involving domestic violence, you're out. But anything involving lack of honesty, I'm going to get back to this in a minute. Drug and alcohol abuse, the agencies differ one to another. You have to look at that agency. Psychological or adjustment factors, lack of maturity, or criminal associations. Now I'm going to bring to your attention something that's very important to anyone going into law enforcement, and that is what is called Giglio. Now, what in the world is Giglio? It's based on a Supreme Court case which ruled that the government must provide the defendant. Now, discovery material, for those of you who don't know, it's material that's given over to a defense lawyer before someone testifies. And they have to turn over anything regarding lack of candor on an agent's or officer's record or on anyone who's a witness for the government. And this has huge implications for law enforcement. Now, I'm going to point these out right now. A recent review on the Wichita PD revealed that the following officers were giglioed. This means they can't testify in court. Or if they do, you have to bring up their alleged dishonesty in the past. A current sergeant who went through an internal investigation over off-duty employment in which there was no sustained finding of dishonesty, still he was put on the list as being giglioed. Now, the U.S. attorneys are the ones who make this determination. And if you're applying for a federal job, it's going to be the U.S. attorneys because they're the ones who call you. You always go to federal court. Another one, a current officer, when he was 16 years old in 1988, was convicted of taking beer. The conviction was expunged. Doesn't matter. He's giglioed. So that means when he gets on the witness stand, they say, have you ever been found guilty of lying in court or stealing? And he has to say yes. And if he doesn't, and obviously the U.S. attorneys don't want to appoint him or place such a person on the witness stand. Another one, a current officer who was 19 before he was hired, shoplifted something worth less than $20. He completed a diversion program. The charge was dismissed and expunged from his record, but it was still a Giglio issue. Okay. A current officer who was 17 was put on juvenile probation for a misdemeanor theft and criminal damage to property. He took pennies from a vehicle ashtray. Is this ridiculous? Yeah, it's ridiculous, but it is what it is. I mean, it is what it is. A current detective who was a juvenile in 1980 was charged with shoplifting a pen light from a convenience store. So would all these people be eligible for top secret clearances? Absolutely. Would the federal government hire them as agents? No, they would not. Okay? No, they would not. Again, reasons for denial, psychological or adjustment factors, lack of maturity. Can a person be suitable but not secure but not suitable? Sure. And a clear example, a 300-pound person may qualify for the highest security clearance in the land. Could be president but not be suitable for law enforcement. Okay, a couple videos ago I did one on a CIA recruiting video, and the lady said she has all this anxiety and all this stuff. Well, she could probably have the highest of clearances but not be suitable for law enforcement. So that about wraps it up. again, the security clearance thing versus suitability. You can be disqualified, found unsuitable for things like in the DEA. If you've ever used heroin ever in your life, you're going to be found unsuitable. Okay, but for security clearance, as long as you haven't done it in the last 7 years, you're probably good. On the other hand, if you're applying to the Border Patrol and your wife is a citizen of North Korea, I don't know, whatever, you're fine. They don't care. But if you're trying to get in the FBI, they do care. So, you have to bear both of these things in mind. There's the security clearance, there's the suitability determination. Hopefully this has put some light on it. The biggest thing to be concerned with is the Giglio. That was something that they were really, really concerned with in my time in DEA, and they're still concerned about it. And if an agent is ever found to be have lied on an investigation, or if you lied on your background, anything like that, you're out. The mandatory penalty is now firing, because they say, what the hell can we do with an officer or an agent who we can't put on a witness stand? And that's a good question. Well, can you make them a supervisor? No, because they have to sign everyone else's report. So you have to put them into a non-enforcement position. They may qualify very well as an analyst, because analysts don't go to court, but agents go to court all the time. So hopefully it's been enlightening. I hope it hasn't been bad news. Maybe it was, but again, please hit the like button and subscribe so I don't have to get a job. And thank you for watching. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the section. Thank you.